I would propose that we look at the home fund tax, which I supported both by ballot and by voice, and double it.
The homelessness problem is going to grow, and it's going to grow significantly, and we aren't talking about the size of that conversation as a community right now.
Why are you running for city council, and what are your goals if elected?
Jim?
Again, thank you. I'm Jim Cooper. I'm running for position 7. Thank you so much to Interfaith Works for having us. It's important during this pandemic when we're having a lot of trouble reaching out to the voters individually to have these forums. So please keep doing them. I just want to start out by saying I'm running because I have a 10-year-old daughter, and it's all about her future and the future for her kids and grandkids. And I'm really proud of our council for continuing to be a data-driven, people-focused organization. And we are looking for new and better ways to do that every single day. Obviously this job is not easy. It's not glamorous. In fact, we are governing under 5 emergencies. We have a housing emergency, an opiate emergency, a pandemic emergency, a climate emergency, and the economic emergency that ties them all together. You're seeing that very present in the work of Interfaith Works in your services in our community. For me, all of those things are about inequity. It's what I've always been about. Before the pandemic, 1/3 of our households were struggling to pay their bills in Olympia every single month. If you're a single parent, female-headed household, that's 3/4 or more, 77% of those households, and half of our Black and Hispanic households are struggling to get by every single month. That's 9,000 to 10,000 households before the pandemic really not able to make it. So in the coming years, I'm going to focus on a recovery that's equitable for all people. Housing and childcare are the largest costs, so we're going to continue to keep building as much housing as we can of every single type. In fact, Olympia is on track to single-handedly achieve the countywide goal of 300 permanent supportive housing units by 2024. So the Regional Housing Council, which I chair, is going to add 150 units to that goal. We have to implement our climate plan, continue to make strides, and then make sure that our climate and our housing work are equitable for our lowest income neighbors. It's really important that we don't pass that bill on to them. So thanks for having me.
Spence.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, Interfaith Works, for having me here. I am a 4th-generation Olympian who moved back to Olympia 25 years ago to raise my family. I now have 3 wonderful kids and a great wife. I'm a graduate of Whitman College in Walla Walla, Washington, but I've been a local realtor here for 25 years. I would like to announce that I'm trying to get seat number 7 for Olympia City Council because I care about the city and I think we're headed the wrong direction. I'm going to apologize in advance today that I am really under the weather, suffering from fog brain a little bit, and there will probably be no attempts to need to wave a sign at me today because it's going to be brief and terse. In any event, I will be focusing on creating more affordable housing for the city of Olympia, trying to address the root causes of homelessness that not only plague our city, but our country, and to embrace and encourage the vitality of downtown small businesses. Thank you.
Question number 2. Homelessness is a central concern and crisis in our community. A recent plan related to homelessness involves a proposed site for people living in cars and RVs that would relocate vehicles parked on Ensign Road to Martin Way and Carpenter Road. Would you please comment on this proposal and how would you relate it to a wider plan for homelessness that you would endorse? Spence.
I think the relocation of the campers to the Carpenter Road property is a good start, but it's simply not enough, and we need something, as others have mentioned, on a much larger scale. It is a good thing to move the current location and mitigate it as much as possible. Ideally, I think it's going to take a piece of property outside the city limits, someplace in Thurston County, that would accommodate the entire RV population in our community. And I would like to think that that is the way we are thinking as a city, not someplace within the city. A bigger issue to me is the moving of the mitigation site on Franklin Street over to Plum Street. and the neighborhood implications that's going to have in our community. I have gotten several contact points from members of the St. Michael's community that are really concerned about this. And I think there has to be more discussions about this. Anyway, that's where I stand. Thank you.
Jim?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is something that's coming from the county. They're taking the lead, and I'm really excited about it. Not necessarily a planned piece, but really growth of a population that is interfering with our hospitals' access by emergency medical services. And so the plan is to move about 20 folks, most vulnerable, probably senior citizens, to the site out on Carpenter Road, shuffle the population down away from the emergency exit to the hospital, an entrance to the hospital. And then the county and the city are working on buying another piece of property to move the whole population to a little bit longer term temporary site that will also have the ability to build a building or two that are permanent supportive or affordable housing in the future. The plan that we have is to keep mitigating the Band-Aid approach that we have while we build more units. We're 14,000 units behind. We have an economic issue with people struggling to pay their bills, and literally, even with all of the COVID enhancements, people falling out of their homes because of the pandemic. There's tons of federal money and people are still losing their houses, even with eviction moratoriums. It's easy to sell your property or transfer it to another LLC and evict someone. And so we have to keep building in every income strata while we look at really growing the number of permanent supportive housing units so that we can move people out of camps and into permanent housing. I'm really excited that this, in about a month or two, the new Interfaith Works project will open. You'll have the first built for service shelter in the Thurston County ever, and you'll bring on 2 shelters within a couple of weeks of each other. Those projects and the next phase of that project and the Family Support Center project will really help. And I think that we'll start to see some changes on the streets with our street dependent folks as we have more of those units online. So thank you.
Question number 3. Many consider homelessness and affordable housing as interrelated challenges. Please describe how you understand the relationship between homelessness and affordable housing, and please name your goals and methods for expanding affordable housing in our region and city. Jim?
Thank you. As has been demonstrated by all the people before me, this is a super complex question. I think the thing that I'll say first is how my largest disappointment in 10 years on being on the city council is that every time we need to cite either poor people or homeless people near anywhere anyone lives or works, there's immediate obstruction. Every single neighborhood in Olympia is dealing with the housing crisis and the homelessness crisis at the same time. I'm hearing it at the doors, and what people aren't talking about is how big the inflation of cost of housing and cost of goods is, to Clark's point, with zero change in wage. And so if you are on disability and you make $1,200 a month, you can afford $300 in housing, and that you've lost 25% of that capacity in 1 year just because of the change of the cost of housing. The city of Olympia will have to continue to find ways to subsidize those people who need permanent support, who need care and services for their whole life. And to Spence's point, it's undercounted. The count is double, and we know it. That's been proven and shown by research across the country. So we have about 1,000 people that need permanent supportive housing now. We have some of them in shelter, some of them in camps, some of them in unsanctioned camps, some of them on couches. I know people that have their family members that are in those places on a couch, or I have a friend right now who's a senior citizen on disability or on Social Security who can't leave the hospital because there's no house for him to go to, and he can afford $500 or $600 a month. And it's a horrible situation, and it's growing to a point. I mean, I hate to be Debbie Downer here, but there's nothing that's in the city of Olympia's control right now to fix this problem, and it's going to You know, it's a giant tidal wave coming at us without some significant state or federal intervention. Even the talk about catching up on units is really going to make it tough for people who work in downtown to live in downtown. And so the city can do things in the next level up, like our first workforce housing project that we're working on in the downtown, and continue to do things like that to fill in around the edges. But if you've looked at your grocery bill, your Lowe's or Home Depot bill or Ace Hardware bill, looked at the rental market right now, the homelessness problem is going to grow, and it's going to grow significantly. And we aren't talking about the size of that conversation as a community right now.
Spence.
I'm going to jump to the back end of that question and talk about some of the things I'd like to see happen to make building in Olympia an easier process. Number one, I'd like to consider rezoning current commercial zoning areas to residential, and then allow ground floor units, which will increase our housing stock as well. We do need to streamline the permitting process, and I would suggest we can do that with oversight by a citizens committee. I had a cup of coffee with Meg, and she told me how her eyes were opened with the permitting process to get the building on Martin Way up and going. And so I know that she's well aware of those issues. I think we need to make it easier on our homeowners to build accessory dwelling units on their property, and then largely consider eliminating or reducing impact fees in our city, a barrier to building, and fees that are always passed on to the end user. Make no mistake that we need to build up and out and near current transit areas so people can enjoy services downtown and get to their jobs. And we would like to be able to wean our reliance on single vehicular traffic and fossil fuel usage. The lack of affordable housing is the single biggest and most unfair inequity of all in our city. That being said, the relationship between homelessness and affordable housing, I think the current population of the homeless is grossly underestimated, as it doesn't include people who are forced to couch surf or massive bunking up episodes. There is a difference between becoming unhoused while in Olympia and coming to Olympia unhoused. And part of the discussion we need to have as a community is, how do we stop this ever burgeoning population from continuing to grow? I would propose that we look at the home fund tax, which I supported both by ballot and by voice, and double it. And then look to repurpose a large proportion of those funds to rental assistance to keeping people housed that are currently housed. Until we can increase our housing stock units so that supply finally outstrips demand, we are going to be facing this issue. We need to take a harder look at supporting the working poor.
The Squaxin Island Tribal Council recently signed a memorandum of understanding with the city of Olympia, and the Squaxin tribal flag was raised at this signing and will now be a permanent part of the flag display over City Hall of Olympia. Describe the importance of this MOU and the role that you would like to see regional tribes play in the ongoing stewardship of these lands.
Jim?
Thank you. This was the most historic moment in Olympia history in a long time, at least in the decade that I've served. The first accord was signed about 10 weeks prior to me joining the city council and developed by former Mayor Ma. From that relationship, we have continued to build our tribal relationships that, weren't really that good for quite a while, and mostly because we didn't focus on them. And so about 10, maybe even 15 years of real focus. And the first moment of, the first historic moment for me in that recent history was a couple of years ago when we transferred the McAllister Springs water source back to the Nisqually tribe. And to me, that's the kind of thing that we need to do to make this relationship real and make it more than symbolic. We've been meeting quarterly with the tribe, and I would say the big project that we're all working on right now is that we agree that we need to restore the mouth of the Chutes River, restore the fishing runs, and make that estuary a new and vital piece of our culture and our economy and our relationship with the tribe. We're doing other things like looking at names. What should the name of Priest Point Park be? Because it had a name before white people came here and named it. And so we continue to find new and exciting ways to partner. We have economic development conversations about what we can support the tribe and develop with the tribe. The Nisqually tribe is building an opioid treatment facility right in the city of Olympia. It's a huge investment with no local funding that I know of. And that's the kind of partnership that we need as we continue to see what kind of investments our tribal partners want to make in our community. You know, the land acknowledgement that hangs in City Hall, there's one at Percival Landing right on the beach where we all share the land. And I think that's the lesson for the community in this is the land is not ours. We are part of the land and the land is part of us. And that's not how we govern. That's not how we budget. And that's not how we set policy. But we certainly can't undo development rights and move in a backward direction either. The tribe wants us to continue to protect our environment and do what government is for, the interface between the built environment and the natural environment. So I think there's going to be some awesome things coming, and I really appreciate this question.
Spence.
This is, of course, a late-breaking development, and so I haven't given much thought to how I want the relationship between the city and the Squaxins to foster going forward. I am really pleased with the establishment of the MOU as it properly reflects and documents our history and the importance of our relationship. If elected, I will want to make sure any actions are not just perfunctory ones. I support strong government-to-government relations and would hope that the city of Olympia will also dedicate itself to building stronger working relations with other municipalities. Lastly, I've been a very vocal supporter of one of the challengers for City Council, Robbie Kessler, who is Native American. Perhaps the single most significant gesture to recognize this new symbiotic relationship would to give Native Americans a voice on our council.
Anything else in closing that you would like our audience to know about you and your plans of what you will bring to this position? Spence.
Yes, thank you. I am hoping, if elected, that I will bring a common business sense approach to running the city. I want to thank you guys for offering this forum this afternoon and providing my oldest son with a job. He works in Interfaith Works, and you guys do great work in our community. Thank you.
Jim.
Yeah, I'll just echo the thanks to Interfaith Works. I really appreciate you doing this and getting it out. You know, it's important that more people run for office. I mean, honestly, the coolest thing about this year was how many candidates we had coming into the primary. That's been my goal, you know, since I was a little kid. You know, we have to have more people and more different types of people in our leadership. And I just happen to be one who was in the right place at the right time and want to continue to serve my community. I thank Olympia for the trust they put in me. Obviously, these questions and what we're facing are super complex, and even when you're doing the job, it's hard to answer them in a short, concise answer. And so I'll just ask people also to go to my website, electjimcooper.com, to find out more. I'm honored to be supported by organized labor and environmental groups alike, and appreciate your vote on November 2nd. Thanks a lot for doing this.
Well, thank you to our candidates today for joining us.
Anyone that watches my videos is by definition a good person.